Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the same few financial giants appear behind some of the biggest companies on Earth. Technology companies, banks, energy companies, pharmaceutical giants, retail brands. You may know the names Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Tesla, but there are companies operating behind the scenes that most people rarely talk about. Companies managing trillions of dollars. And here's the shocking part. Some of these financial giants have investments connected to thousands of companies around the world. So who are they? How did they become so powerful? And do they really own everything? Stay with me, because the answer is much more complicated and much more fascinating than you might think. If you want to discover the unbelievable wealth, hidden power, and secret financial networks behind the world's biggest companies, subscribe to Explain TV, because today's story is about to get even more shocking. When most people think about powerful companies, they think about Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Saudi Aramco, or Nvidia. These companies create products, develop technology, sell services, and generate enormous amounts of money. But there is another type of company that operates very differently. They don't manufacture smartphones. They don't deliver packages. They don't build electric cars. Instead, they manage money. And when you manage trillions of dollars, your influence can become enormous. One of the biggest names in this world is BlackRock. As of the second quarter of 2026, BlackRock reported approximately $15.3 trillion in assets under management. That's a number so large that it's difficult to even imagine. But there's an important detail. BlackRock does not simply have $15.3 trillion sitting in its own bank account. That money belongs to clients. Those clients can include individual investors, pension funds, institutions, governments, and other organizations. BlackRock manages that money and invests it through different funds and strategies. And this is where things become fascinating. Because when billions of dollars are invested into publicly traded companies, the investment manager can become one of the largest shareholders. Suddenly, a company known primarily for managing investments can appear on the shareholder lists of some of the world's biggest corporations. Number 1. BlackRock. BlackRock was founded in 1988. Since then, it has grown into one of the world's most influential investment management companies. Its business covers everything from ETFs and traditional investments to fixed income, private markets, technology, and more. Its iShares platform has also become one of the biggest names in the ETF industry. But BlackRock's real power isn't simply its size. It's the enormous financial network connected to that size. In the second quarter of 2026, BlackRock reported $15.3 trillion in assets under management. Think about that for a moment. Trillions of dollars are being managed across global markets. And because BlackRock invests across thousands of securities and multiple asset classes, its presence can extend across huge sections of the global economy. But BlackRock isn't alone. There's another giant, and its ownership structure is very different. Number 2. Vanguard. The second name is Vanguard. Vanguard is one of the largest investment management companies in the world. But there's something unusual about Vanguard. Unlike a traditional publicly traded corporation, Vanguard operates under an investor-owned structure. Its funds own Vanguard, and those funds are owned by their investors. That means the people investing through Vanguard's funds are ultimately connected to the ownership structure itself, and the numbers are enormous. Vanguard reported approximately $11.9 trillion in assets under management as of March 31st, 2026. It also serves tens of millions of investors around the world. Think about what that means. Millions of people are investing their savings through Vanguard. People saving for retirement, workers contributing to investment plans, institutions managing long-term money. And when millions of investors put their money into giant funds, those funds can accumulate enormous positions in major public companies. This creates something extremely interesting. You don't need to personally own an entire company to have a significant financial interest in it. And sometimes, the biggest names appearing on a company's shareholder list aren't individual billionaires. They're investment managers. Number 3. State Street. Now we come to a company that receives far less attention from the average person. State Street operates across investment management and investment servicing, and its numbers are staggering. As of March 31st, 2026, State Street reported approximately $5.62 trillion in assets under management. But its assets under custody and administration were even larger, approximately $54.52 trillion. And this distinction is extremely important. Assets under management are money that State Street manages as an investment manager. Assets under custody and administration are assets for which it provides services such as safekeeping, accounting, and other financial functions. So it would be misleading to say State Street simply owns $54.52 trillion. It doesn't. investment. But the number shows something else. It shows just how deeply giant financial institutions are embedded inside the global financial system. The Big Three. Now let's put the picture together. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. These three names appear repeatedly among major institutional shareholders of huge publicly traded companies. But here's where the internet often gets the story wrong. You may have seen headlines saying BlackRock owns everything, or BlackRock owns Apple, or three companies secretly control the entire world. It sounds dramatic, but reality is much more complicated. These companies generally manage investments on behalf of clients. If a fund owns shares of a technology company, those shares are part of the fund's investment portfolio. The asset manager doesn't simply take the company's profits and put them into its own personal bank account. The economic interests generally belong to the fund investors. So why does the ownership structure look so powerful? Because millions of separate investments can be pooled together into enormous funds, and those funds can become major shareholders. But here's where it gets really interesting. Imagine 10 million people. Each person invests a relatively small amount of money. Individually, their investment might seem insignificant, but combine all of those investments and suddenly you have billions or even trillions of dollars. Now imagine that money being invested across thousands of companies. The result is a financial network that is almost impossible to see from the perspective of an ordinary investor. You might own a small amount of a retirement fund. That fund might own an ETF. That ETF might own shares in hundreds of companies, and an investment manager may manage that ETF. So when someone says BlackRock owns this company, the real question should be, what exactly does own mean? Legal ownership, economic ownership, voting rights, fund ownership, or simply managing the assets? These are not the same thing, and understanding that difference completely changes the story. Why their influence still matters. Even when an asset manager isn't the ultimate economic owner of the shares, its role can still be extremely important. Large institutional investors can vote shares at corporate meetings. They can communicate with company management. They can participate in corporate governance discussions. And because their investment portfolios can be enormous, their decisions receive serious attention. This does not mean they can simply order a CEO around. It doesn't mean they control every company, and it certainly doesn't mean they control the entire global economy. But it does mean that giant asset managers have become extremely important players in global financial markets. Their power comes from one thing above all else: scale, not necessarily secret ownership. The most surprising part. Here's something that makes this entire system even more fascinating. Some of the largest shareholders of major financial companies can themselves be other giant investment managers. For example, public shareholder records can show large institutional investors holding positions in one another and in other major corporations. This creates a massive, interconnected financial network. Money flows into funds. Funds buy shares. Those companies have shareholders, and those shareholders can themselves be institutions managing money for millions of people. It's a financial ecosystem, and it's far more complicated than the simple idea that one company owns everything. So, who really owns the world? The answer is nobody. At least not in the simple way viral videos often suggest. There isn't one secret corporation sitting in a skyscraper controlling every company on Earth. Instead, ownership is distributed among individuals, pension funds, mutual funds, ETFs, governments, institutions, sovereign wealth funds, and other investors. But there is something else. The global financial system has become so concentrated around a relatively small number of enormous institutions that their decisions can have extraordinary importance. And that's why companies like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street are so fascinating. They don't need to own everything. They simply need to sit at the center of a financial system where trillions of dollars pass through their hands. The future of financial power. And this story may only be getting started. As more people invest through retirement accounts, ETFs, and passive investment products,
as markets become increasingly global, and as technology makes investing easier for ordinary people, the amount of money managed by giant financial institutions could continue to grow. And if that happens, their influence over global markets could become even more important. But remember something, managing money is not the same as owning the money, and owning shares is not the same as controlling an entire company. The reality is much more complicated, but perhaps that's what makes it so fascinating. Because the next time you hear about a giant technology company, a massive bank, or one of the world's most valuable corporations, don't just look at its CEO. Look at its shareholder structure. Look at the institutions behind it. Look at where the money comes from, because sometimes the most powerful players aren't the people standing in front of the camera. They're the institutions quietly managing the money behind the scenes. And that is the real story of modern financial power. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world's most powerful financial companies, subscribe to Explain TV for more stories about billionaires, global corporations, hidden wealth, and the financial systems shaping our world. Because the companies you see may only be the surface. The real power could be hiding behind them.